Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 online action. Today we're taking the Lizardmen against Bretonnia, so let's get to the army compositions. I've got generic Jabba here, High Mage, Slann Mage Priest here. So in terms of spells, we've got Apotheosis and Tempest, just in case of Flying Lords. Bretonnia, of course, has pretty powerful flying units, so a relatively decent pick here, and Apotheosis, just a nice, cheap, efficient healing spell that also procs that Shield of Safri map-wide. We've got a unit of Temple Guard to protect, solo unit of Horned Ones just to try out how they're going to do in this matchup. Rest of the army is 4 Saurus Spears. We've got 2 Saurus Scar Veterans on the Cold Ones here. We've also got a front line of Skink cohort with Javelins. The MLG Javelins, super cost effective for their price. For the Bretonnians here, they've got a front line of Foot Squires, second line of Men-at-Arms with Polearms, Lewin, and a Paladin, both on foot, which is very lore unfriendly, I feel like, but whatever. A couple of Peasant Bowmen, one with Pox, and 2 Knights of the Realm with 2 Grail Knights. So, yeah, you can see the Foot Squires starting to advance here, and they are getting pelted by the MLG Javelin Skinks, and the Javelins actually do a pretty solid amount of damage. The Saurus Scarvet also charging forward, just kind of pinning these guys up. He does decent armor-piercing damage, but the Paladin, of course, with the anti-large, will be able to do a bit of damage back to him. So it's going to be a bit of an even trade there. But, yeah, you can see Knights pushing up and around the flank. I'm trying to intercept with the Saurus Scarvet. He has decent mass, but they still get a decent charge into those Skinks there. And, yeah, the Scarvet will be able to drag down a few of them if he can get some attack animations off. Right now he's getting staggered pretty hard. Horned Ones had charged in, did a ton of damage to those Foot Squires, and now pulling back and charging into the side of the Knights of the Realm. Unfortunately, a whole bunch of other Bretonnian cav collapsing. So at this point, the Cold Ones are just having a hard time because they're out unit modeled. They just have less unit models. Apotheosis trying to keep them nice and healthy, and the Revification Crystal, I believe, also going down there, give them some support, so they should be able to do okay, but they just don't have the best sustained combat stats, at least in terms of their melee defense for their price. Meanwhile, generic Jabba here laying down his blood statuette of spite, I believe, on those Foot Squires there, routing them off, and his Temple Guard doing a great job dragging down those Foot Squires as well. Grail Guardians out on the side with their huge melee defense. It'll be a kind of a wet noodle contest. And yeah, this Scarvet, unfortunately, a little bit of mismicro by me, has been left here for far too long. Took a ton of damage from the Paladin and the Foot Squires. Granted, he was able to do a ton of damage, but not really cost effective at the end of the day. Gary, the Revification Crystal, a little bit involved with halberds here, which is not great, but he should be able to do okay. Looks like we're going to be dropping a banishment right on top of him from the generic Jabba there. That should do great at springing Gary loose there and doing a ton of damage. You can see Gary coming back, dropping a nice terror bomb on the Foot Squires there. Meanwhile, over on the far side, just this grinding battle with the Saurus Spears, slugging it out with the Grail Knights, and there's peasants in here as well. Saurus Spears I'm not super sold on. I mean, they're decent in this matchup in particular because you can pretty much always expect cavalry, but they'll lose pretty hard to Foot Squires, which isn't the most cost-effective trade in the world. You can see this unit, this Saurus Scarvet, rather, absolute unit that he is just by himself, has managed to rack up 40 kills, mostly against Bretonnian cav. The Horned Ones come in the late game, rallied, and get a nice charge in here, but unfortunately taking the back end of that a little bit with the Knights of the Realm, high charge bonus and anti-large bonus as well. Once the sustained combat goes down, the Horned Ones should be able to carry that back and get a little bit more damage done, but haven't been super cost effective in this particular matchup with all the anti-large cav that Bretonnia can bring to the table, which my opponent definitely brought plenty of. Meanwhile, over here, these Grail Guardians still just wet noodling against these Saurus Spears. They'll just wet noodle each other all day because the Grail Guardians have such good melee defense. Paladin's trying to get a hold of generic Jabba here. Unfortunately, he is on foot, so he's going to be pretty slow, and he's not going to be able to pull through these these Temple Guard to save his life. So yeah, they're doing a great job. We're going to be dumping most of the healing into them. You can see the aura of pretzels that surrounds the Slann here, giving them some bonus armor and melee defense to help them sustain that fight. Meanwhile, the Saurus Spears, heroic as they have been over here, are getting dragged down by the Grail Knights there. So a little bit unfortunate. Meanwhile, this Saurus Scarvet got a ton of healing, has actually been able to stabilize and just about take down these Knights of the Realm, and I'm a huge fan of the Saurus Scarvet as a melee hero. I think he's probably one of the best melee heroes in the game. He can drag down entire units of cavalry. Granted, it takes him some time, but if you can keep him alive, and with the Lizardmen that's not that hard because of how much healing they have, he can do a ton of damage and is a really nice tool against heavy cav type factions. Meanwhile, the peasants are trying to rally over here. You can see the Temple Guard are in a little bit of a desperate situation, so we're going to drop the other banishment right on top of them. A little bit friendly fire. I guess that's one way to try and save them, is to just drop a huge magic spell on top of them, of course, but Apotheosis also going down, trying to keep him. Shield of the Old Ones as well, of course, given the magic resistance, maybe not get hurt quite so bad by the banishment, but I did manage to break the peasants they were fighting, so now they can focus back on ye old Paladin here, who, I mean, the attacks from the rear of the unit model, especially, that bypass their melee defense, Temple Guards do have pretty heavy weapon strength overall, even though they don't have the best combat stats, so they'll be able to drag him down over time. The Grail Knights, though, getting in on Jabba the Mage Priest here, generic Jabba that is. So the Solar Sphere is going to come into support. And yeah, generic Jabba setting a couple of them flying there, but he did get popped that cold-blooded, and of course I still got plenty of healing with the Apotheosis as well, so not in too much danger of losing out on my leadership, but still very close in terms of the balance of power after everything. Just been slowly grinding each other down, but you can see both of the Saurus Scarvets, having got some healing, are still online critically. And you can see the Paladin, though, getting dragged down here, and oh man, did he just get like his arm chopped off by the Temple Guards there? Man, that was absolutely brutal. Bluin really just distraught over the loss of his companion here, going to be charging over and doing a nice little thrust there, duking it out with these Temple Guards. Man, he is just not getting staggered at all. That's quite impressive, but yeah, not really sure why my opponent didn't bring a caster here. Actually, I have played him in a couple of other games as well, and he didn't bring a caster either. I mean, it still ended up being a pretty close battle, but I would pretty much always recommend bringing magic if you have the capacity to, so pretty much if you're not playing the dwarves. But anyway, you can see the Slann here just floating on by, not wanting to get involved with the Grail Guardians too much, who, having finished off these peasants, are going to turn their attention, the spears, the Saurus spears here, are going to turn their attention to these Grail Guardians, having finished off those peasants there, so yeah, Lewin, though, still relatively healthy. We're going to kind of save him for last because he does have regeneration and decent combat stats and everything, so if we can try and eliminate as much of the army as possible before we deal with him, that would be ideal. That being said, we're developing a little bit of a pitched battle here in the late game, with Jabba supporting these Saurus spears here, and Gary, of course, being the tank that he is. Man, Gary is like the ultimate tank, I'll tell you what. People think that the steam tank is a tank. No way, dude. Gary's got the melee defense to get it done, unlike the steam tank. That's a discussion for another day, though. I am planning a video discussing about how steam tanks should have melee defense, because been talking with some various people and doing some research and so on, and yeah, steam tanks should have melee defense, but that's, again, the topic for another day. Generic Jabba exploding some peasant heads here. Oh man, oh wow. I don't think I've ever seen that animation before. That was amazing. That peasant definitely paid the price, but anyway, in the late game here, it is going to turn into a little bit of a monster mash with the few Temple Guard that remain somehow still fighting here. All four of them with their 162 hit points still fighting in here. Gary and everyone else trying to gang up on Lewin now. It's pretty much time. The peasants will try and come through and come to the aid of their king, but you know, these peasant bowmen have used all their ammo, which in and of itself is pretty decent, but just not able to come back, and having their heads exploded by generic Jabba here. So yeah, another Apotheosis goes down, healing up those Temple Guard, I think. Yeah, the Temple Guard that are still somehow alive, actually not getting much healing from that because they only have the 4 unit models, but yeah, Lewin himself making his final stand here against all the Lizardmen. Not going to be easy time for Lewin. And yeah, he's going to give up the fight pretty soon, and once he goes, the rest of the army will of course go as well. So well played to my opponent. Hope you guys enjoyed watching that one. Fun battle, bit of a different build from my opponent. Again, not sure why he didn't bring a caster, and if you are watching this, J Pash L, I'm not really sure, I'm probably butchering that, but yeah, definitely bring a caster, even if you don't want to be boring, quote unquote, and bring Lore of Life. Lore of Heavens is really good here. Like if he had Harmonic Convergence to help buff up some of these Knights of the Realm and Grail Knights and so on, they can do very well. Even using Harmonic Convergence to buff up Peasants to make them trade way above their weight class can be very, very cost effective. Curse the Midnight Wind is great, Wind Blast is great. Even if you take Lore of Beasts, it's not ideal, but it's something. Magic is just so powerful, you definitely want to always bring it. But anyway, I guess the Slan showing a good reason why. There are 112 kills between the two banishments, and he used all 4 charges of the Blood Statuette of Spite, which is sort of like Rune of Wrath and Ruin, about the same damage I would say, but it doesn't have the speed debuff, but it has 4 charges. I'll show you that in just a minute. But the Sora Spears being very cost effective in certain situations here. 50 kills, 37 for these guys with some XP chevrons to go around. 113 of course for the Temple Guard with an XP chevron as well. Very cost effective. The Horned ones not so cost effective, although I did misuse them somewhat. I'm not super sold on them in the heavy cavalry matchups, especially with a lot of anti-large type cavalry like Bretonnia can field. Just a bit of a gamble, so I might try them against the non-anti-large cav factions, like maybe High Elves or maybe Chaos. I think it would be pretty decent there as well, but I don't think they're necessarily a great pick against Bretonnia. I don't know, there's some more looking at, and maybe with a different lore of magic they would do better. But Gary, of course, being the absolute force of nature that he is, for my opponent, the Foot Squires, decent pick in this matchup, honestly. They can trade well against Saurus, even like Temple Guard and stuff, really like that. The 2 polearms, not too bad. Overall, my opponent's army composition is pretty solid. Other than lacking a caster, it was definitely pretty solid. I mean, it has a heavier infantry core than what I would expect, so it'll do well at trading with like Saurus and stuff. The 2 peasant archers did a great job as well, just poking at different things continuously. The Grail Guardians did better than I was expecting rather, just mostly fighting infantry I guess, but 163, 120 for these Grail Knights. So yeah, for my opponent, if you were to just cheap out 1 or 2 units, you know, you could easily swap in a caster here. Even like a Damsel on Foot with 1 or 2 spells would be relatively cheap. So yeah, thank you all for watching though. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button so every time I upload a new video you'll be notified. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.